Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. My name is Angelia, and today I'm doing Friday reads. For once in my life, I am filming Friday reads on Thursday. Every single week, I always say, why don't I film this on Thursday and edit it and get it ready? And then Friday it'll just come out, and I won't be like scrambling to film it and edit it and put it together. But week after week, I failed to do this until today. And I wouldn't have even thought about it today, except we had just gone out for brunch, which we never do because we are never hungry at the same time except dinner. But we did, and so I got back and Steven's like, "You ought to film your video now." And I was like, "Yeah, I ought to do that." When I did Friday Reads last week, we were about to go see Cabaret the next day, and we did. It was really good. There's two community theaters in this town. We've been to both of them now because we went to see A Christmas Carol in December at the bigger theater, and then this is a smaller theater, but they have live music. So they have like over on the side of off the stage, they have like a little two-tiered place for a band or orchestra. So that was really cool, and that really enhanced, Cabaret, the feel of the band being right there. And they just did an excellent job. I was really impressed. And I have never seen that play. I've heard some of the songs from it. So I thought they did a great job. And for those of you who are aficionados of this play or musical theater, it was the 1998 version. So for what it's worth, they said that at the intro, but it was really good. We enjoyed it. We finished watching Slow Horses. We saw both seasons. This is a spy thriller that's British about an MI5 group that is comprised of people who've been relegated to this kind of bad location. They're given odd jobs. They keep getting involved in these major plots, though. They're supposed to be people who have made various types of errors or gotten into the bad graces of the director for some reason, and they've been sent to this outpost. The main draw of this is Gary Oldman as the director. He's hilarious in this role. It's fun. It's like reading a fun detective book or thriller. So we've enjoyed it. Then we started watching Shrinking, which has Jason Segel and Harrison Ford and some other people in it, about a psychiatry practice in Pasadena. And Jason Segel is a recently widowed man who's been kind of a mess for about a year since his wife died. And he's just kind of starting to crawl back up out of that hole and try to reintegrate himself into his own life. And he has some damage to repair in his relationship with his teenage daughter, his best friend, and his coworkers. And he's still just he's kind of starts to develop this new style at work where he's tired of just sitting and being non-judgmental while people kind of rehash and spill out the same problems week after week. So he starts just telling people bluntly what he really thinks they should do and getting more involved. And he's crossing all kinds of boundaries by doing this, but it's actually having some effects. So it's funny. We've enjoyed it. We've only seen a few episodes, and I think we've seen all the ones that have dropped. So we actually need another show to watch until, I guess, next week when this show has more episodes. So if you have a great idea for a show, drop it in the comments. I keep a running list. It's really dorky. Like on a piece of paper, I have a list of shows and movies so we remember ones that we might want to check out. So if you have something I should put on my list, let me know. Okay, let's move on to the books. This week, I read, I have 3 books to talk about in a short story. One of the books I just barely started this morning, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it, but I'll share my initial impressions. All right, so first of all, I finished Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. This is an author that I'm a big fan of. I'm super annoyed that she has not written a book I really think it's been like 7 or 8 years since her last book came out. So according to my clock, it is high time for a new Sarah Waters novel. Here's the funny thing about memory. So I remembered that I really liked it. It was the first book I read by Sarah Waters, and then I went on and read her other books that she has written. And when she has written new books, I go out and I get them, and I really love Sarah Waters. So my memory was really loving this book. And I remembered the basic premise, which is about as much of it as I'm going to tell you because otherwise, spoilers. But when I'm rereading it, I was shocked by what I did not remember. I mean, major parts of the plot that I completely forgot about. And even when I reread them, it wasn't like, oh yeah. I mean, so there were some things in there that were oh yes, and then some of it I was just like, wow, that it just surprised me all over again, and I didn't remember any of it. So I don't know if this is I don't know what this means. I don't know if this is a tale about the state of my brain. I don't know if this is a statement about uh, that I am not a close enough reader, or maybe just the years that pass and the other books that accumulate that my brain only, it kind of keeps like a backup copy and not a nice full clean copy. I don't know, but so I read it to participate in the queer, what's it called? The Queer TBR Tackle, hosted by Greg of Supposedly Fun and Jen of Jen the Librarian. And you can access it through Jen's Discord. It is set in Victorian England, and the plot here, the beginning plot is there's a girl named Sue Trinder who lives in basically a house of thieves. She was grown up an orphan and taken care of a woman named Mrs. Sexby, and they live in a house that has a revolving cast of people that come and go and fence in stolen goods, melt down, candle holders and sell the metal and stuff like that. And everybody has skills of con artistry, pickpocketing, thievery, and she picks up on some of these skills living there as she grows up. And at the age of 17, a person of their acquaintance that they call Gentleman, but he goes by Mr. Rivers in the course of this book, but he approaches her with an idea. He wants her help with a con, kind of a long con, and he has discovered a home in the countryside with an eccentric. I mean, they kind of present him as a kind of a weird old man, but then when later on when they introduce him, they say he's about 50, and I took offense at this old man description, but um, that he's kind of this academic who spends all of his hours cataloging something obscure into a giant index or encyclopedia. And he uses his young niece as a secretary, and she is the same age as Sue. And Gentleman's plan is that he wants to fool this naive and sheltered young girl into marrying him because she is going to come in to a fortune. Her uncle wants to keep her to himself and not let her marry anybody. And then the money will just sit there and it won't go to someone deserving like Gentleman believes himself to be. And he wants Sue to come along and fill the role of her maid so that she can be a bad chaperone and he can seduce the girl and get his hands on the money. And then he'll give Sue a little cut. So she agrees with this plot reluctantly, and off they go. And let's just say everything is not exactly as it seems, and there are lots of surprises in this plot. We get to hear from two very distinct narrators, Sue and also Maud, the other girl. And every time you think you've got your handle on what the con actually is, a new level is introduced, and it twists and turns. There's lots of action, but the thing that's like the most joyous about this novel is the just all the attention to the details and the senses, like the way everything looked and smelled, the quality of the light, the feel of the fabrics, the contrast between the wealth in the larger home and the conditions in London, and how these things look from different people's points of view. Like Sue feeling homesick about the house she grew up in versus how Maud sees it when she has occasion to also go there. And it's just, you get a little bit of everything in here. You have evil, dastardly villains, plot twists and turns, unexpected fallings in love, a Victorian madhouse. It's a very fun book. Um, I enjoyed reading it again, and because I have a brain like a hunk of Swiss cheese, I enjoyed it all over again and was completely surprised. So after Fingersmith, I did decide to go ahead and read Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng because I've checked it out from the library and it was either read it or let it go and get at the end of a long line, because I had the good luck to put in my request right when they opened it up to requests after they had processed it. And so I think I'm the first one, and I know that there will be a lot of people waiting to check out this book. And so even though I had some qualms about whether or not I was going to like it, based on the fact that my previous opinions of her books, and I talked about this last week. The first book, Everything I Never Told You, I thought was excellent. The second book, Little Fires Everywhere, I liked it okay, but I thought it was overrated and a little bit melodramatic. Some of the plot strands I thought were kind of clumsy. So that made me wonder what's going to happen when she embarks on speculative fiction. So here, I'm going to tell you my thoughts about the book, and it's kind of a mixed review. I did enjoy it. I read it very quickly. It gripped me. It held me all the way through, and there were some things that I liked a lot about it. It also had some things that I thought were weaknesses. Not everybody will agree, but I'll just kind of try to share this in a general way without giving away too much of the details. So, Our Missing Hearts. Um, to understand what's going on in this book, imagine that when we had the the recession that was in 2008, 2009 kind of time period, imagine if that recession, instead of improving, had deepened and worsened and gone on longer and gone into the worst depression in US history. And imagine also that in the same time period, as did happen in reality, that some economies in the world did not suffer these consequences and actually were strong and improved during those times, China being one of them. So in this book, that is what has happened, and the US has picked out China as the scapegoat for these woes. And in the rise of the economic crisis and the fact that everyone except the super wealthy are deeply affected, um, civil unrest breaks out. There's protests, there's riots, there's different opinions about what has happened. And in response, a very conservative presidency that comes in creates something called the Pact, which is, what does it stand for? It's PACT. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but basically it is a very stringent set of rules meant to keep things orderly. As part of this, there is a mass campaign of suspicion against what is called PAOs, persons of Asian origin. And so the whole climate of hatred or suspicion and violence against Asian people really heightens. And legally, a lot of culture is wiped out. Books with Asian characters or writers, not just Chinese, but anything, just for good measure. So books have disappeared out of the library, artwork is gone. Various people have been jailed or disappeared that are believed to be dissidents. Part of this act, something that was slipped into the act, was a small clause that people didn't pay enough attention to at first, which said that children can be taken away from their parents if they are believed to be un-American, like dissidents, bad influence. Their children can be taken. And they fail to think about how that could be weaponized to control people and stifle people. And so this is all a big backdrop, and this is not really a spoiler because this is explained pretty early on in the book. But there's a kid who's living with his dad named Bird, but he's being called by his real name, Noah. Only his mother called him Bird, and they no longer use that name. They don't talk about his mother. They don't refer to her. If somebody asks about her, they say we don't know where she went. We don't agree with her views. What has happened? I can't tell you exactly what has happened, but she's gone, and he lives with his dad, who used to be a linguist professor, but now he shelves books at the university library, and they live in a little dorm apartment. Bird's mother was Chinese American. His father is white. Um, and sometimes people look at him and they see him as Asian, and sometimes they do not. And he gets different reactions from just general people in public, the kids at school. And he has reached the age of 12. She's been gone since he was 9. He receives a mysterious piece of mail that only has pictures of cats on it, and it triggers some things in his memory that lead him to put together the idea that his mother's reaching out to him and wants him to come find her. All right, so that's as far as I'm going to go with what happens in the plot. The strengths of the book, in my opinion, are the backdrop that I explained and its plausibility. The idea that there's a rise in suspicion and hostility towards Asian Americans. The background in our history of children being separated for different reasons and those reasons being legalized. The author talks about some of those actual historical events and books that she consulted in the end of the book, and it's an interesting afterword to read. I thought the character of Bird and his mother are well rendered. Also, his young friend Sadie, and his dad, who's trying to do the best he can in a terrible situation and keep his son safe and with him. What I think is not as strong in this book is the quickness that Bird goes from being a very compliant, obedient, accepting of the situation kid to feeling fully equipped to just upend the status quo. I don't want to get too much into what he does in the story, but he goes from 0 to 50 pretty fast. Now, this might be my controversial statement. And if you have read this book, please tell me if you agree or disagree with this in the comments. But I thought that the big climatic event in this book was kind of underwhelming. And I can't say anything more about it without spoiling it. But if you read this book, please tell me if you felt like that too. I just was sort of like, is that it? Said I liked it. I guess I didn't love it. I do like it better than Little Fires Everywhere for sure. I like it up neck and neck with, or maybe right below the first of her books. So that is my overall thoughts about Our Missing Hearts. Please let me know if you have a similar or a different experience with this book. All right, so after that, I needed one of those little palette mind clearers. And so I pulled up a short story by E.M. Forster because I'm also participating in the Forster Read Along this year. And this month is short stories. So there are some available online. And somebody in the Discord suggested the story, The Machine Stops. And so that's what I pulled up to read. And just, wow, I was surprised by this story. It is apparently the only science fiction story or speculative fiction story that E.M. Forster wrote. He wrote it in 1909. So if your experience of Forster, like mine, is Room with a View and Howard's End and Morris, you too shall be surprised by this science fiction tale set in the future. I'm surprised that this is not a story that has made its way into, this seems like something that would like be popping up in high school anthologies. And I can't believe that maybe it did get, exhumed during 2020 because, man, it has got some social distance vibes like you would not believe. But this is a story that takes place in the future in a time when people are living underground. Like the surface air of Earth is not safe, and people can travel in an airship to go from one place to another, but they're all assigned to places in these underground pods, and they do everything virtually. Now, remember, this is 1909, but in this story, you will find social distancing and people feeling very awkward and uncomfortable when they have to see each other in person. And you will find things that today we would call university Zoom classes, uh, FaceTime or Skyping is in here. People arguing about things you should do in person versus why can't we just say it, here on this, screen. People, if you think about any book or movie you've seen where like the people's human bodies are kind of atrophied because they just have everything done for them. That's in this story. Everything being at the touch of your fingers and mechanized. Just like so many prescient kind of little things are in this story. And and then if you look at the title, you can kind of guess where we're going with this. So it is a 25-page story that I thought was just, I was mesmerized by this story. The minute I started reading it, I was like, wow, what is this? I wish he had written more science fiction because this was really, really cool. So then that brings me to today and the book that I have started reading, which is Dr. No by Percival Everett. I have mentioned several times that I am like really eager to start reading this, so I did. And already, I've only read the first 2 chapters and I have laughed out loud several times. I don't really know where we're going with this story, but the satire and the humor. So, I read The Trees, which I love, love, love The Trees so much. And then I read Telephone, which is really not funny at all, but also excellent. So this one I'm glad actually is funny. But the description, it's about a guy named, he's a math professor named Walu Kitu. And here's how he introduces himself on the second page of the story. My name is Wala Kitu. Wala is Tagalog for nothing, though I am not Filipino. Kitu is Swahili for nothing, though my parents are not from Tanzania. My parents, both mathematicians, knew that 2 negatives yield a positive, and therefore so I am named. I am Wala Kitu. That is all bullshit with a capital Bull. My name is Ralph Townsend. My mother was an artist. My father was an English professor who ended up driving a taxi. I am, in fact, a mathematician of a sort, but I use the name Wala Kitu. I study nothing. I found out that Ralph Townsend actually was a character in a previous Percival Everett book called Glyph. I have not read this book, but apparently Ralph is a child genius in that book, and now he's an adult who is a mathematician. So now, of course, that adds another book I need to go read. But Ralph is a mathematician, and that in itself, just going on the sheer love of Percival Everett to get past the that it's a math professor is the main character, because my feelings about math range from like disinterest to confusion to sheer terror. I mean, I just don't really want anything to do with anything mathematical, but I'm going to have to steel myself against it whenever it comes up in this book in order to enjoy the book. But he is approached by somebody named John Milton Bradley Sill, who is a gazillion billionaire, who wants him to help him break into Fort Knox and steal the nothing that he says is in there. So that's what happens at the very beginning. And then he goes out to try to buy a car, which is also hilarious. But already the playfulness, the puns, the names, like John Milton Bradley Sill, and then another one of the math professors, her name is Eigenvector, and just I feel a fabulous experience coming on, and I'm really excited to get farther in Dr. No, and I'll be able to tell you all about it. So there you have it. The books of the week. I would like to know what you've been reading. Please leave me some comments down below. Let me know if you've read something great this week or what you have planned for the weekend. If you've read any of these books, I really enjoy hearing your comments. What am I looking forward to for this weekend? We're going to a vegan slash vegetarian meetup thing at a restaurant tomorrow. Maybe meet some new people. And I am waiting to hear. Okay, here's a story I haven't heard. I feel like this story might end up being anticlimactic, but last night my daughter texted me and said, "Oh, I need to call y'all tomorrow and tell you about our visit to Freeman Ranch." Well, I got really excited because Freeman Ranch is a body farm, and it's one of only 7 body farms in the US, and one of them's at her university. So I was like, "Oh," and then she's like, "No, that's not, we didn't go see the bodies. We were doing something else." I think it was her ecology lab because she's a biology major. I don't, so, and I think there's like, there's not just a body farm. There's also like a, I don't know, some kind of sanctuary for a rare warbler or something. So I think she did something environmental, but I haven't heard the story yet. But man, for a split second there, I was living the dream that I was going to hear a description of the body farm, but alas, it is not to be. But you know, maybe someday. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to leave on that morbid note, and I hope that you have an excellent weekend. Bye bye.